Right, today we're going to have a go at making some side rails for the Kite Buggy. We're not going to make dead straight parallel side rails, which is what you'd normally find, say, on a Cougar 2 or something like that. We're going to make the Cougar 2.5 side rails, where they just come out slightly round the legs just to give you a bit more leg room. Right, to start off, we're going to be using 1-inch shed 10 stainless tube. Now you can either buy this just mill finish, or you can get it polished. It costs a lot more to have it polished, but if I'm making a polished buggy, I tend to buy polished tube. It saves a lot of work. It obviously costs more, but it saves all the mess and everything else. Right, so these are two pieces of 1500mm long, 1-inch shed 10, and now I'm going to show you how I normally bend it up. You get them CNC bent, which is much easier, but it costs, well, at least double the amount than bending them yourself. And it is quite easy to bend them yourself once you know what you're doing, and I'm going to try and explain that the best way I can. It's a little bit awkward in places, but I'll do the best I can, and then you have to work out whether you can do it or whether you have to get them CNC bent. I find the easiest way to make sure your bends are always the same is to just make a layout on the floor. I use a piece of hardboard, map a whole buggy out on the floor. I mean, on this particular one, you can see where I've had loads and loads of different side rails for different configurations, and on the front here you can see where I've had a round tube for my dominators, leading links on the front there. But map everything out, and there's the distance from the bottom of your side rail plate at the front to the floor. So we've got everything on there. That just gives me a starting point. So do yourself something like that, whether you do it on the floor or do it on a piece of hardboard like what I do here. Up the top here is where I make the bends, and I'll show you. I'll give you the dimensions for them later, and that's it. So what I'm going to do now is start marking the tube out where I want to put the bends, and then we'll start bending. Right, so we've only got two marks on these tubes. We mark them all the way around. So from the front tube, it's 325mm, and from that mark to that mark is 350mm. This will be our front bend. This will be our main bend under your arm, what comes underneath your arm. So another thing I just want to point out here is that wheel there is a Bigfoot wheel, but we should be going to this centre of a barrow wheel, and the same up this end. Centre of the barrow wheel. So our rails will be coming down to about there. When we're doing a Bigfoot, the rails come up here, so we've got to put the bend. If I want to keep that distance there, if I want to keep that distance and I want the rails the same height, I have to put more bend in to bring that down there. I've basically got to follow this line here. The first bend we're going to be bending is this top rail bend here. So get a bevel or a 2-foot rule, just to give you a rough idea of where the bend's going to be. Someone like you is all you know and how you speak. And before you take it out, measure from the top of the former to the edge of your bender, and then you'll know how far to bend the next one, if this one is right. You know that I could use somebody, yeah. Someone like you, whoa, whoa. Okay, so I've got our first bend in, and if you want to know what that bend is, okay, so we've got our second bend set up. Well, this is how a lot of people set it up, and this is where a lot of people go wrong. They have the tube for the second bend at 90 degrees, which is wrong. The tube has to be bent right over to get the bottom rail level rather than sloping down, which makes your legs, your knees come in. So what we have to do is we have to tilt this over. So that's what I'm now going to do. Is I'll set up a square down the bottom there, a piece of angle line, and I'll square up from that, just touching the tube at the top here. And then I'll do the same the other side. Remember, these have to be opposite hand, and this is where most people go wrong. You can see I've done here. I've clamped this aluminium angle line onto the end of my bender, clamped it on the two clamps so that it's dead square to the bender. And now I've tilted that over so it comes level with this edge. So now we've got to do the opposite hand. We could leave the bends like this and have the rails parallel. All we need to do is chop them to bring them into length and to chop the end, and you could finish it at that. But what I like to try and do now is just try and bring this bend out a little bit. Not much, just to give your legs a little bit of room. Someone like you is all you know and how you speak. Careless love is on the corner of the street. You know that I could use somebody. You know that I could use somebody, yeah. Someone like you, someone like you, up in the night, the angle there is 72 degrees. You can see we're all clamped up. You can see our angle all ready for the plate. Another template laid down here. This is the position for the forks and the axles. There's the swan neck down there. This is where the side rails join. There's all the various widths for the different side rail widths. Squared up, so we're 400 inside the rails. And now we're all ready to mark it up. I'm ready now, 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 I'm ready, I'm ready now. And there's the side rails done. Right, that's the side rails bent up. What I'll do next is I'll show you how we fit the plates on to the axle and the side rail plates. So I hope you'll have a bash of these. They're not as hard as they look. You just got to remember to tilt that part over on the second bend, the bend round near the front. Once you tilt that your rail over, you'll get it nice and flat at the bottom, which is what you want. That's where most people go wrong. So see you on the next video.